I'm pleased to introduce our speaker, a very distinguished individual who's come down from Washington, D.C. to be with us, a former Sergeant Major of the Army. This is a position that was created in 1966. There have only been 17 of them in the history of the position. He held it from 2019 to 2023. He served a long time in the U.S. Army, more than 3 decades, served at every single level of the Army, and as Sergeant Major of the Army, of the 400,000 or so enlisted individuals, it's the highest ranking individual, the enlisted individual of all those people. And he had 4 years at that level. He's had 6 combat tours in Iraq, Afghanistan. He's had tours in Saudi Arabia, an operational tour in Kosovo, and has been in many other places. He's been a graduate of more schools in the Army than I've got time to mention. So if there's an Army school, he's been to it and graduated from it. He's got more medals than I have time to mention. I will just suffice it to say that he has multiple Army Distinguished Service medals and 2 Bronze Stars with Valor. He's currently, in his post-Army career, he's continued to serve, and he's the CEO of the Army Emergency Relief, the official nonprofit of the United States Army, which has been serving the needs of soldiers since 1942. I told the crowd that this speaker series makes some gifts, and we have a gift to you for Army Emergency Relief of $1,250, and I'll leave that up here. And please welcome to the stadium Sergeant Major of the Army.
COVID hit. Yeah, there you go, COVID. We had COVID, and then we had, George Floyd was killed, and then you had the whole country's on civil unrest. We had hurricanes, forest fires, still had COVID. We still had soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan, and then we had an election, then we had all these things going on. You had January 6th, and I'm sitting there watching, people run through the Capitol, and I'm like, what else is going to happen in my 4-year, wait a minute, I hadn't even gotten to the 2-year mark yet. And then we leave Afghanistan, and then we go back to Afghanistan. If you want, we can talk about that. So we left Afghanistan in July of 2021. In July of 2020, I'll say that one more time, all combat forces left Afghanistan. So it was like, hey, we got to go back. I was like, I thought we just left. We're like, yeah, we need to send people back. We're going to do this thing because we're ordered to do it. We're going to go back in August. It's like, okay, we're going to evacuate 120,000 Afghans. I was like, where are we going to put them? They're like, I'm just going to put them on Army bases. I'm like, I'm not the State Department. Like, what do you want me to do with that? So, between, going to war with Iran, you had COVID, you had hurricanes, forest fires, civil unrest, election, and you leave Afghanistan, and now I'm putting about 100,000 Afghans on an Army base. And the first one, they go, hey, we're going to put them in Fort McCoy, Wisconsin. I'm like, you're going to put Afghans in Fort McCoy, Wisconsin. They're like, yeah, that's a great idea. So it's a terrible idea. It's so cold, but they'll be gone before it gets cold. Of course, it wasn't. We had to try to figure out how to get jackets, and, they were wearing flip-flops in Fort McCoy, and it's minus 20. So we had to get jackets. We had to get those things. So with all that said, finally, at the end of that, I said, okay, I'm done. I got through 2 years. I'm going to be honest. I am being as honest as I can right now. At the 2-year mark, it's a 4-year stint. I thought, I can't make it. I'm being very honest with you. I literally went to behavioral health. I said, I don't think I can do this job for 2 more years. I had world-ending event after world-ending event, after another event, after another event, and it was just like, it was just wearing on me. Now, I did make it, I'm going to be honest. Clearly, I'm standing here, but it was really tough. It was tough for the Army. It was tough for everybody. And I was just so worried that, one thing was going to go wrong, and it would tarnish us as not just a nation, but as the nation or as the Army. And I was super worried about that. I was traveling a lot, make sure we're doing the right thing over and over and over. It's like, no, you can't do that. You got to do this. You got to do that. Don't do that. You got to do this. You got to do that. We got to do it right, because anything goes wrong in that 2 years, you could lose the Army. We could lose you. Your faith in the Army. And I said, I just don't want to do that. We got to make sure that we're straight on all these crazy missions. No matter what happens, whatever craziness they give us, we have to be ready for that. We were constantly worried about that all the time. So we finally get through that. I made it. I get through that very tough time. And then, why not? Russia invades Ukraine. I'm going to be honest. At the end of all that, I was like, finally, I know how to do that. Right? At the end of all that, I go, I know how to do that. We know how to fight. I mean, what do you do with COVID? Like, you sneeze and everybody dies in the room? I'm like, I don't know what to do with that. I mean, it really did. And they're like, you Army people got to figure it out. I'm like, okay, sure. But when Russia invaded Ukraine, it's like, okay, good. We got this, we got that. We know how to do logistics. Oh, you need weapons. We know where those are. So I'm going to be honest, that was probably the easiest thing that happened in my 4 years. Although it's tragic, it really is tragic. I have been to Ukraine. I have physically flown into Kiev, picked up a linguist, and I worked with Ukrainian paratroopers when I was a staff sergeant in the United States Army as a paratrooper out of the 173rd. So these are people I know. So when I say that Russia invades Ukraine, I don't take that lightly. It's just a mission I knew exactly what to do with. But I could promise you, I would not condone Russia invading Ukraine. These are people I've known for a very long time. I was a staff sergeant in 1993 when that was. So we'd been over there for a long time. And sometimes there's these correlations between, I make a correlation between Ukraine and Afghanistan. So somebody's like, how do you make that correlation? I said, we left Afghanistan. Yep. So there's like, well, what happened in Afghanistan? Well, what'd you do wrong? I said, I didn't do anything wrong. It's like, what do you mean you didn't do anything wrong? You saw these people on the TV. I said, we did everything right. But here's one thing I can't teach you how to do. I can't give you the will to fight. I give you weapons, I can give you training, I can make you the best trained, but if you don't have the will to fight, I can't do anything for you. That's Afghanistan. Ukraine had the will to fight. Okay, look at it. The president of Afghanistan was the first one on the plane. The president of Ukraine stayed there. When you got to the border in Ukraine, and you are military age male, they said, that's really cool. Turn around. You're going to go fight for your country. In Afghanistan, who was that trying to get on the plane? It's all the military age males. That's the correlation. I can't give you the will to fight. So we got criticized like, you did all these things wrong in Afghanistan. Nothing could be further from the truth. Those soldiers, and I got 2 tours of Afghanistan. Every soldier that served there admirably and with a purpose and did everything that you all had asked us to do. And it's disrespectful, in my opinion, when you talk badly about the Army and what we did in Afghanistan, because it's just not true. Why? Because I was there. And I make those 2 correlations where one country had the will, the people had the will to fight. In one country, the people didn't have the will to fight, and there's nothing I could do about that. I could have stayed for 100 years, and it's not going to change that. Okay, and at the end of all that, I got to leave as the Sergeant Major of the Army. So finally, the turmoil after 3 years of craziness, they let me free. And somebody says, well, at the end, the famous question everybody wanted to ask me at the end was legacy, and I said, I'm never going to answer that question. You tell me if I did a good job. And then finally, somebody gave me a question that I would answer. They said, well, would you do it again? Or what would you change in your life? And I still remember in December 23, they asked me that question. I took a very long pause. And I said nothing. I said, for every soldier that I lost, that's the first thing that came to mind. It's like, yeah, I should have changed that. It made me the person that I am today. It gave me a drive that I don't think I would have had any other way. It gave me a purpose. It gave me a mission to make sure the Army didn't lose any other soldiers. When I looked at what equipment we had, what we wore, what we put our soldiers in, what we fed them, it was all to make sure that they were the best that we could give them so that no other soldier had to do what I had to do, is bury a friend. So at the end of that, 4 years, I said, I wouldn't change anything. And some people probably in this room would argue that I was all wrong in that. But I would just tell you, that's how I felt. And then at the end, I said, I would do it all again for you all. 36 years, when my daughters were 10 years old, I had deployed 5 years of their lives, not to the field, to combat. I missed 50% of their lives when they were 10 years old. And I wouldn't change a thing because this country is worth it. I would do it again every day. Okay. There you go, almost on time. And I do want to say, I'd like to see if there's any questions you want to open it up. Before I do that, I was asked to talk about one more thing, and I wanted to talk about it very quickly. And I was talking in the car, and somebody said, there's this little thing I do want to clarify. So NCOs in the Army versus all the other services. So any Navy, Marine Corps, or Air Force veterans in the room? I'm sorry. You're not going to like what I'm about to say, so you can come after me right after this, so you can yell at me all you want. So the Army has the best non-commissioned officers in all the services. So he's like, he's not laughing. He's like, I don't think that's funny. So I did preface that. I was at a luncheon one time. We had Senator coming in, and we're at the 101st. So at the time, I was Brigade Sergeant Major. And in the Army, seating matters, right? So the further you are from the head table, like the lower you are. So I was way off. The senators and the 2 stars are up there. I'm like way in the corner on the bottom left. And the senator said, what makes our Army great? You keep talking about great Army and this stuff. And, you say all this stuff, and do you really mean it? And then, they all hemmed and hawed for a little bit. Then way down here on the table, I go, I got something. It's like, what is it? I said, well, it's our non-commissioned officers. And they're like, well, everybody's got the. I was like, do they though? Do they really? I was like, okay, every country may say they have non-commissioned officers. Every service has a non-commissioned officer. And I said Army specifically. And then I said, well, in the United States Army, most of our enlisted have more education than other countries' officers. Fact. So if you graduate right now from the United States Army Sergeant Major's Academy, you actually get a degree. It's an accredited university. Well, it was in 2023. They might have changed it as soon as I left, but I can't attest to that. It's an accredited university. And the missions that we would give, a little bit different from the Army and the Air Force, is that when you're on a mission and you're enlisted in the Army, one person on this side, that tank commander is going to be enlisted. On this side is going to be a lieutenant. So if you asked and said, who do you want in the fight? If they're a tank commander, you're probably like, I think I'll take the E7 in the Army. And the difference, not to knock our Air Force, is like, who's the fighters? Oh, it's the fighter pilot. Well, where's the enlisted? Oh, that's the mechanic. That's not the same in the Army. They lead. And matter of fact, at one point I made a little joke. Somebody's like, oh, in Ukraine was taking out all the tank lieutenants, and they slowed down. We were like, in the Army, we were making the jokes like, yeah, if they killed all the tank lieutenants, the platoon would just go a little faster because the platoon sergeant goes, you just keep going. So, so the enlisted in the United States Army, I think over the years has just got more and more responsibility. It's not like it was when I joined, like right after Vietnam. We've evolved after 20 years, and 30 years later, they're even better than we ever were. So as I was leaving, people was like, well, how do you feel about the Army? I said, they're going to be great. It's like, what do you mean? They're going to be better than me. You know why? Because I trained them. And if they're not better than I was, and I am, whose fault is that? You know, everybody's like, oh, back in my day, we wouldn't do that. We're not that good. And these youngsters aren't good. Well, you trained them. If you were in the military and you got out and they weren't better than you, that's your fault. I know, it's not mine. So when I left the Army, somebody said, well, how do you think about the 17th Sergeant Major Army? I said, he's going to be better than I ever was. And if he's not, it's my fault. And that's what's special about the United States Army, is that we're constantly trying to make the next generation better than we were, and we're not afraid to tell anybody. At least I'm not. And if they're not better than I ever was, then I will go get a mirror and look at it and say, how did I fail as a leader? And that's what really makes the United States Army so great, is that you're constantly trying to get better. And we're constantly trying to make the next generation better than we ever were. And I'd say the Army in the United States military has never failed at a mission, and I looked at that as a mission that I would make them better than I ever was. And I think they're always great. They always were, and they always will be, because we're always trying to make that next generation just a tad bit better. Okay. And I would close with, I really, really appreciate being here with you today. And somebody has to ask a really hard first question, because I love like fastballs to the head. So don't give me an easy one. So I got to, as we wait for the first question, okay, I had a lieutenant, I was doing this, I was Sergeant Major Army, and they lieutenant said, I got a question for you. How do you put your pants on? So you can't go anywhere from up for that question. Yes, sir. Yeah, repeat the question. So the question was, when Russia invaded Crimea in 2014, were there U.S. forces? Now, were there U.S. forces in Crimea or Ukraine? I'm not sure if they were in Crimea, but there for a fact were U.S. forces training Ukrainians in Ukraine. Matter of fact, they didn't leave until Russia invaded Ukraine. So we had special forces and conventional forces in Ukraine, training Ukrainians since 1993. Like I said, I was there. I did some operations, and then we actually had a whole bunch of people training with them for a long time. But we didn't pull out forces till Russian invasion in 2022. Does that answer your question? Okay, you got the first question, and I always swear I do this. If you know anything about coins, I actually have two. There's one pocket, and I said the first person to ask questions, I can give them a coin. Okay, good. So on this coin, you didn't hear that I'm the CEO for AER. Oh, by the way, I'm the first enlisted to be the CEO of AER, by the way. I replaced a 3-star general, if you're trying to. Why are you laughing? Is that bad? I was like, I thought that was good, not funny. But I'm the first enlisted to retire and then be the CEO of AER. Sometimes like, well, are you the guy? No, I'm the CEO. And I have to explain this to people all the time. But so on one side it says CEO of AER, and the other side says 16th Sergeant Major Army. So thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, cool. Thank you. There you go. Hope I didn't mess up your camera thing over here. Yes, sir. Yeah.
All right. So Russia did not have an NCO corps. It's supposedly one of the.
They would say they did.
Okay. So talk about the Ukraine and Russia and that whole what made Russia so ineffective in the beginning of the war.
Yeah. Because they said they had an NCO corps, and they found out they were incorrect. I mean, everybody says they have one. I use the example. I worked with, I've never counted how many countries I worked with. I don't know. So if you ask me that question, I'm like, I have no clue. I really don't. But, because I do speak German, I was embedded with the German army one time, and, like, hey, go work with the German army. It's like me. And I did this with a lot of countries. And I'm not special forces. I'm just some soldier. So, but I did these weird missions. So a lot of people say they've got one of these, but they don't. And here's what the example, what I saw around the world. Because sometimes you don't know what we do. You don't see it. You can't feel it. You can't taste it. You're like, he can talk, but what does he really do? So we would show up, and then the general would say, hey, that's my sergeant major. And they would go, oh, that's really cool. And that's what we showed them. That's my sergeant major. So here's what the Russian had. That's my sergeant major. It's like, what does he do? And I'll give you an example. I was working with a country, not Russia, and it was a brigade level position. And he goes, that's my brigade sergeant major. And I said, okay, come on, we're going to go do this and go that. And he just looked at me like, well, I don't do any of that. I'm like, well, you said you're the brigade sergeant major. He's like, yeah, but I don't do any of that. I mean, I'm just the brigade sergeant major. I was like, but what do you do? He could not explain his duties and responsibilities in that army. He just had the title because the American Army had this thing called a brigade sergeant major. So they wanted one of those too. They didn't know what to do with him. And in their culture, that the whole process of empowering people was foreign to them. It's about power. In the United States Army, General Funk at one time, does anybody know General Funk in here? I'm not talking bad about him anyway. One of the best people I've ever known in my life. Walked up to me and says, I want you to train the Iraqi Army. I'm like, the whole Iraqi Army? He's like, yeah, all of them. Like, all of the Iraqi Army? He's like, yeah, all of them. I'm like, Sergeant Major, you okay? I'm like, okay, I guess I'll go do that. So I wrote, I know it's crazy. Nobody believes me when I do this. I wrote the training plan for the Iraqi Army that they're using right now, today. So it was like, there was me and a sergeant. So, would the Russian army tell their division sergeant major, because I was division sergeant major at the time, said, you're going to go train the Iraqi army. I want you to develop the plan and I want you to execute it. Get bullets, get the training area, set it all up, and do that for the whole Iraqi army. Probably not. That's what I did. I can't tell you that any other way. But they have one, but they don't know what to do, and they are deathly afraid of giving power away. Because when General Funk has to be a great leader and has to trust that he doesn't have to know every answer. He has to say, I want you to do that. And then kind of just let it go. A lot of people just aren't comfortable with that. They think, I have to know everything that's going on, and well, he's still responsible, and he got fired if I screwed it all up. It's true. So there's a lot of trust in that. There's probably no Russian general on the planet that would have that much trust in the person that stood next to him. So yeah, they had one, and as soon as you shot the person in charge, they fell apart. But no kidding, it would just like, oh, I developed a plan. I guess I got to keep training the Iraqi army. I don't know what to tell you. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
The Ukrainians have gotten very, very good with drones.
Yes.
How good are we with drones?
Well, we taught them everything they know. How about that? Let's call it like, there probably is a classification on this, but I would just say that, we're not. I saw, let's go to open source. I saw an article, I still read, articles, and someone's like, we got to do better with drones. Let's make no mistake, we're not stupid. We're really good. We're just as good as any other country with drones. Drones are everywhere. I said this about 2.5 years ago, maybe 3. It was the chief and I were talking about drones. I said, if you've been to Iraq and Afghanistan, everybody knows IED, an improvised explosive device. They make them out of all kinds of things. You walk around, they blow up all over you all the time. I said, the drones will be the IED of our generation. I said that 3 years ago, and sure enough, now they're flying everywhere, dropping. They're cheap. They're hard to knock down. IED was the exact same thing. It's cheap. They can make it with anything. They can take fertilizer, just make a little bomb, blow you all up with. And then they were doing the same thing with drones, and we said the same thing. We have been working on this for a long time. So we just take, well, I'm not going to tell you that, but we do a lot of stuff with drones, and I think I'm very comfortable. Now, have we do better? Yes. Seeing, 100 drones flying at you, yes, does that scare me? 100%. Right? Because it's hard to fight 100 little $50 drones coming at you. We get a little bougie. We want to shoot $1 million rocket to knock down a $50 drone. So we just had to get better at that. And we were working on that 3 years ago. Matter of fact, we've been working on that for probably the last 15 years. But, 2 years ago when I left, we were working really hard at that. And anything we would probably want to test, why wouldn't we just take it over to Ukraine and see how it works? We're not stupid. Yeah, what you got? Yeah, I've actually had that question a few times. So those of you, we'll say more seasoned folks in the room, when, we came out of Vietnam, we had that same problem, right? So I didn't say same problem, so I came in 87, but it's about 10 years left, 1975. So about 10 years after that. So you have this, oh my God, what we're going to do? We just left combat, that huge sense of purpose. And then, we did 90s, and then we had that 10-year, 2001 kind of moment. What I would tell young leaders is their biggest challenge should be you. In other words, make your training, very difficult and challenging. I think the younger generation want to be challenged. And everybody's like, oh, they're lazy and they do this. It's like, well, because you're not challenging them. When they go to basic training, they still respect their drill sergeant. They do all these things. And you, as a leader in the United States Army, have to make that event as equally challenging and fun. And a lot of times we just like to make it miserable, right? We're going to take you, this is a true story about me. I was stationed in Germany, and I was going to go train, believe it or not, they brought me back to train the 82nd Airborne Division on Fort Bragg in North Carolina. They brought me from Germany to train a brigade. I don't know why they did it. It was an experiment. And then we get there, and they go, you know what? You can't leave the base. I said, I'm American. Like, yeah, but we don't want you to get in trouble. I'm a battalion sergeant major. I'm 37 years old. I'm in America. And they literally locked us on the base. Don't do that. So make it fun, challenge them. That's number one. Make it fun. And the second thing is make it really challenging. I'm gonna be honest, I still remember our first combat tour. I go to Desert Shield, Desert Storm. I came out of Ranger School, and they're like, why do you think this is so funny? I was like, I think I probably should have died more times in Ranger School than I did in Saudi Arabia. Right? I mean, it was just like that huge sense of purpose was there in that training mission, and I wanted to accomplish that training. And I think sometimes we get afraid to challenge people because we're afraid it's going to be hard, and people can die. And I'm not going to lie to you. Army stuff, all military, things fly, they're big, and it can kill people. So there's that fear, so we make it so easy. I'd say make it harder. I mean, when you come out of that event, you go home, I'm going to talk to Mama. It was great. My mom cried one time when she saw me as a paratrooper on Fort Bragg. They brought the families out, and she's like, that's the hardest thing I've ever seen anybody do in my life. I think that's what we need to do. Don't be afraid to make it that hard. And I promise you, it'll save lives later. So if you have to go to combat, you don't have to worry about it. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I'm going to work my way back. The guy right behind you is the same thing. Yes, sir. Yeah, don't do it. Yeah, that's illegal. I will not do that. That's pretty simple. If somebody says, hey, this guy's captured, you're in Iraq, you've got a detainee, I want you to shoot him, that's unlawful. I'm not going to do it. It's pretty easy for me. I mean, we get classes on it. Like all the time. It's like, okay, that's an illegal order. I will not do it. And as a matter of fact, I want to let other countries do it at some point. So I'm going to be honest with you. I got all these stories about this stuff. So, we don't beat, our soldiers. Like, we don't punch them in the face. Not supposed to anyway. So, it was kind of funny. An Iraqi colonel in front of me just punched his young Jundi, it's what they call the Iraqi privates, in the face and starts beating on him. I'm like, hey, you need to stop right now. And the guy looked at me like, I'm a colonel. I was like, I don't care who you are. Do it again. And you're going to see, like, all these soldiers around here, they are going to listen to what I'm telling them. And the U.S. soldiers. I said, hey, we don't do that. You will not do that while I'm standing here. We get classes on lawful and unlawful orders. It gets a little fuzzy sometimes. I'm not going to lie. It's hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. Let me tell you a day in my life. I was a young first sergeant. I just had a soldier killed on a patrol. I caught the dude that did it. That's a tough one. My soldier's dead, and this guy's alive, and my soldiers, they wanted their pint. Maybe I wanted 8 pints of that blood. That's a difficult situation to be in. We detained him, and we took him back to base. And as the first sergeant of that unit, I couldn't let those soldiers do it. I mean, they're 19, they're 20, and just watched their 20-year-old friend die. And oh, by the way, I was about 30, and I watched one of my soldiers die. So I wanted a couple of pints of that blood too, but I couldn't do it. I wouldn't, get rid of my character for anybody. Nobody. I was the sergeant major of the Army. If I got what I thought would be an illegal order, I wasn't going to follow that either. And you had choices. I would tell you, I'm not going to follow that. That's illegal, and you can either fire me or I'm going to leave right now. At every level, Sergeant Major of the Army to private. Does that answer your question? Yes, sir.
So, Major, what was your most challenging or rewarding assignment, and what was your worst assignment?
Challenge, what's my most rewarding assignment? Believe it or not, I think you probably already figured out. I was a young first sergeant in combat. I'd been through all this training, and I just thought it made sense. It was dangerous, it was terrible, but it was all bad, But it's really shaped who I was as a human being. I really realized that we have the greatest country in the planet. I've seen bad. This ain't it. So, I've literally watched people kill each other in the streets, just throw acid on women. Like, why would you do that? And it's okay. Nobody prosecuted them. So I just really, it gave me this passion of how great the United States Army and the United States is. And it shaped me as a person, although it was terrible because I did lose soldiers in combat. And now my worst assignment the worst thing I've done probably is testifying in front of Congress. So that's probably the thing I'm telling you, nothing prepares you for that. And I still remember the first time I actually had to testify. And most people don't even know, the Sergeant Major of the Army is the only enlisted that really is routinely required to testify in front of Congress. I did it twice my last year. They probably regretted the second time because by that time I was a pretty good vet. But the first testimony, I literally had people yelling at me that never served in the military. And I'm not going to tell you who it was. My first time I testified, it was during COVID, it was on camera, and they were asking me this series of questions. And at the end, you don't get a chance to rebut it all, and this person's closing comments were, never served in any military, said to me, "It's shameful, Sergeant Major of the Army, that I care more about your troops than you do." Boy, you want to see mad? I came out of that room. Now, I was testifying with two other people. One was a 3-star and one was an SES, like Bazillion, equivalent to a 4-star. And she berated me for 2 hours. Just me. I was like, what about these other two people? So when I walked out of that room, man, every word was probably a cuss word. I was furious. I'm like, how dare you? How dare you? Imagine somebody says that to you. You've got that much combat, time away from your family, and somebody just said, I care more about your troops than you do, and they never served. Man, I will never forget that for the rest of my life. So, I was like, there's a reason I'm probably not assigned a weapon right now. So it's like I was so mad. I'm still mad about it. So it's been like 6 years. I was like, ah. So that's the worst thing anybody could ever say to me, and for no reason. Yes, sir.
In your opinion, what is the solution to the Russia-Ukraine war?
Oh man, I don't know. It's a really good question. In my opinion, there's a bunch of solutions, but I think what really popped in my head immediately was, what do I want? I want Russia to leave Ukraine. Like right now, reestablish the border and get out. You invaded that country for no reason, just because you thought you could. And we watched it, by the way. So let me clarify what I'm saying, is that they built up the army and were like, no, they're not going to do it. There's no way. They're unprovoked. They would never do that. And then they invaded. So it really makes me mad that it was like, at least, what was the cause? What was the reason? Because they thought they could take Ukraine. And by the way, they figured out they weren't that good. Right? Because look at it. They tried to get into Kiev and they couldn't do it. So, that's the solution I want. And that's what immediately popped to my head. Get out. But the real probably solution is they're going to have to concede some of that land. It's destroyed anyway. They bombed it from one end to the, if you know anything, and this ain't secret about Russian doctrine, they just carpet bomb everything. Like, yeah, we got more bombs than you got land. And they'll just like bomb every inch. So there's a lot of rubble out there. But the solution I would want is them to leave. I just don't think they will. You know why? I thought when you said 2014, you're going to talk about the other time they invaded another country, and we sit there and watched it, was they invaded into the Republic of Georgia. Not the state, the Republic. And guess what? Again, a little known fact is here comes Sergeant Major Grinston. You're going to fly to Georgia. I'm like, for what? You're going to go evaluate the Georgian army because Russia just invaded the top of this little pot. It says Cisadia is the top of Georgia. So they flew into Tbilisi and kind of worked with the Georgian army. They do that. I think they'll have to concede some land. I think that's the only solution because Russia doesn't want to lose any face around the world, but they just lost a lot of people. But I think they're just doing it. They're just going to stay there. And I have no intel on this. Just trust me, they don't give me intel briefs as the former Sergeant Major of the Army. They did when I was in, but it's been 2 years. So I think they're going to have to concede some land, and that's the only way the fighting will stop. But I really wish it would stop. I'm going to be honest with you. Does that answer your question? Yeah, best I could. I'm sorry. Okay. Somebody standing up, that means it's over. So I really, it was the same when I was in the Army too. Somebody stands up, you got to shut up. So I just want to say thank you so much for having me with you all today. I really appreciate it. I'll be here at least till this evening, and I'll fly out. And I tell you, I love coming out doing these events because I love talking about our Army, and I really appreciate. Thank you for your support. We couldn't have been the greatest Army in the world without the greatest citizens in the world. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you very much.